Say in Nepal, Chinese embassy and the officials are interfering in local issues. The Chinese embassy, perhaps, some of my friends say, is the most powerful embassy in Kathmandu, more powerful than Indian embassy or American embassy.
Some Tibetans that I spoke to who are skeptical about now the thaw between India and China.
You think you can have relations, you can have deal with the Chinese, but you have no idea what the Chinese system, the Chinese world order is. They want to control everything. What happened to us will happen to you. So that's why you should know about Tibet.
President Xi has visited Tibet twice in the last 5 years. What is he trying to signal to the Chinese people with that?
Less with Chinese people, more to the world, particularly India. So in his first visit, the famous speech he gave to the troops was particularly targeted at India. He said we should be prepared, even aggression.
President Xi says that because of Chinese rule in Tibet, there is prosperity out there.
China has benefited more from Tibet than Tibetans have. Tibet is the palm. You control it firmly and you go after 5 fingers. That's Ladakh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. So this is the expansionist policy.
Other Southeast Asian countries where Buddhism flourishes, what do the Tibetans expect from them and what are they planning to do?
Imams are selected by Chinese government, the bishops and cardinals. Now with Tibetan Lamas, right? Soon it will be them.
In your mind, do you find dissonance at any point of time about your identity?
Whenever I meet Indians, anywhere, immediately I say, Namaskar, आप कहाँ से हैं? अरे हिंदी इतना बोलते हैं, हाँ हम भी भारत से हैं, हम दार्जिलिंग से, वहीं पैदा, अच्छा कैसे? Immediately there's this connection. Immediately you become friends. And whoever says, why are you saying this? I'm American, I just avoid these people.
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching or listening to another edition of the NI podcast with Smita Prakash. My guest today is the former Prime Minister of Tibet in exile. Lobsang Sangay earlier appeared in episode 131. He is the first person without a monastic background to hold this position. Lobsang Sangay was born in 1968 in a refugee community in Darjeeling. For more about his story, do watch the episode 131. Lobsang Sangay earned a Bachelor of Law degree from the University of Delhi. Later, he studied international law and democracy at Harvard University, eventually becoming an American citizen. Today's episode is about understanding where the Tibetan movement is headed in 2025. Mr. Sangay, thank you so much for being on the podcast again. I just told my audiences just before we began this conversation that about your story, we have already spoken about in an earlier episode. So this episode, I want to just talk about India-China relations, especially from a Tibetan perspective, especially after this new thaw which has happened between India and China. So I just want to know what is your perspective about PM Modi's visit to China? How do you see that? And especially from a perspective of a Tibetan.
His Holiness Dalai Lama always says, India should have good relationship with all the neighbors. And even Tibetans, we want to have dialogue with the Chinese government to solve the issue of Tibet peacefully. So engagement, dialogue, and diplomacy is the right way to go. Having said that, how do Chinese, perceive India and, the recent visit of Prime Minister Modi ji to Beijing is different matter, Their calculation is they have expansionist design, So we all know, there is what they call weather-tested ally or all kinds of names with Pakistan. They're already interfering in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and also we know about, Nepal and increasingly so in Bhutan. So South Asia should be, India's domain in the sense, respect that. And from Galwan to Doklam, even in the border of Arunachal Pradesh, the intrusion, and building of now around 300 villages, right at the border, there are three tier, right inside LAC, at and outside LAC. So, so their perspective might be, different in the sense coming to Beijing is seen as I don't want to say submission, but agreeing to the notion that they are number one in Asia and they aspire to be number one in the world.
So this is the Chinese perspective. Does that make Tibetans nervous, or does that make it uncomfortable for Tibetans that China is feeling a sense of power over India right now?
Being in the administration, I know each time there's a thaw, because Chinese government imposes or asks, put conditions and pressure on Indian government to do certain things. For example, in 2018, we wanted to celebrate Thank You India event, and at that time, I don't want to name names, but the foreign secretary at that time felt that he could address the Doklam issue by going to Beijing and creating a lull or thaw between Beijing and Delhi. And at the end, he didn't get any concession, and he did issue a notice, a rather memo to everybody in India saying no leader can participate in Thank You India event. Can you imagine? We were organizing events to thank India for hosting us and His Holiness Dalai Lama. It was 60th anniversary of our escape to India. And they're saying no one can come participate in your event, But then, no concession on Doklam, nothing happened. And finally, Prime Minister Modi ji was kind enough to send, the then Cabinet Minister, Culture Minister, Mahesh Sharma ji and the Ram Madhav ji, and then former Chief Minister of Himachal and then Minister of Himachal and Congress MP, all came to Dharamsala and we had a big celebration. And it was unnecessary negative media coverage till that event. And at that event, finally, when Indian ministers came, then it had a positive, narrative. So it happens, So when a foreign secretary or minister or a prime minister goes to China, they will put condition or pressure on us. So that's a bit of a concern. Other than that, if you look at overall in 60 plus, years of Tibetans in India, no matter which party or which person becomes prime minister, which party comes to power, has always treated Tibetans well. Overall, we always say that, we cannot think of any better host for Tibetans. And India has done the most for Tibetans. The largest number of Tibetans were settled in India, educated in India, our monasteries, our civilization, the survival itself, and our identity and culture. Even I studied in a Tibetan
Delhi
school
University.
in India, funded by government of India. So we are very grateful. That's why His Holiness always says, "I'm a proud son of India," because of all this. So yes, temporarily there might be few issues mainly because of Chinese government's pressure. So that will be a bit of a concern. Other
And
than
how much
that,
India can hold up against that pressure?
it all depends, right? Geopolitically, what's happening at that time. Now, many say that the Prime Minister Modi's visit to China after 7 years is partly because of the tariff, the tension or conflict with America. So it's just a chess move that you are making. But we know overall, there are more areas of conflict with China than cooperation. Not that India doesn't want cooperation, but China sees itself as number one in Asia and want to be number one in the world. Thereby, they want to checkmate, all the neighboring countries like Japan, Indonesia, particularly India. So like we discussed last time, to be number one of the world, first you have to be number one of the region. To be number one of the region, you must make sure that the number two is a distant two. Because the moment you have a conflict with the present number one of America, in this conflict, if both of them lose out, right? Then you don't want this next in line, let's say India, to come and replace China. So that's why they're making sure from Pakistan, Nepal, all the neighboring countries, and internally too, right, to make sure that India is distant number two.
So speaking about the region, let me talk about Asia. Countries will weight Tibet against the larger interests that they have with China, right? So everybody wants to trade with China. They don't want to antagonize Beijing in any manner because everybody has disputes in Southeast Asia. Almost every country has disputes with China, but nobody wants to increase those disputes or add Tibet to that mix, right? Do you see India doing the same now?
I don't think so because India has bigger stake with China. Overall, as I said, just look at not just Tibet, right? Not just the border area. Look at all the neighboring countries in Southeast Asia or Central Asia, wherever India wants to have its influence or relationship. China is always there to checkmate. And the larger point that you raise about, in Asia, how many people will take up the issue of Tibet because they don't want to have conflict with China, which is a fact on the one hand. On the other hand, what we say is that what happened to Tibet will happen to you, So if you don't understand and study Tibet, it will happen to you. So let's say Nepal, they didn't believe so, right? Now, yes, Chinese embassy, and the officials are interfering in local issues, The Chinese embassy, perhaps, some of my friends say, is the most powerful embassy in Kathmandu, more powerful than Indian embassy or American embassy. Some say that, right? So why? Because now clearly in Bhutan also is happening, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, they come and interfere and influence, and I don't want to control you, but they come inside your own house. So what happened to Tibet? Yes, the difference is the physical control of Tibet. Other than that, political influence of Chinese government and through the embassies in all these neighboring countries and all these Asian countries are fact. So what we say is, yes, what happened to Tibet should not happen to you. So if you don't speak about Tibet or understand Tibet, it will happen to you.
You spoke about in the recent past how India was not allowed or India decided not to take part in one of your celebrations. Do you see that, the changing geopolitics which is happening now, China might pressurize India all over again not to encourage Tibetan activism in India, maybe, if that's a word that I can use?
Yeah, again, during my time, I was an activist at Delhi University, right? So I have seen, each time there's a thaw or pressure from China or in Chinese embassy.
You can't hold your demos.
Yeah, we can. So the distance to the Chinese embassy is determined by that present, relationship.
The barricades move from Shantipath to
That's
further.
it. Yeah. Whether we can go all the way to the embassy or India Gate or, IT or even come out of, sometimes Majdugatila, or Delhi University is determined by then relationship between Beijing and Delhi, So,
or whether you can have your seminars and conferences in India International Center or not.
That's it. So even there was a movie, Rockstar. Remember? Yeah. In that movie, they showed a Tibetan flag. And then Emmy intervened, and when the movie was actually released, the Tibetan flag, it was shot in Dharamsala amongst Tibetans. Okay. And then, it was blurred, right? So, in fact, a friend of mine who produced a movie called, Four Rivers, Six Ranges, about escape of His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetan guerrillas, trained by CIA and helped and fought with Chinese. So this movie is being shown all over the world. And it was supposed to take part in, Goa Film Festival. And suddenly, I'm sure it's Chinese embassy and Chinese government, through them, I'm sure, someone in the Indian government, whispered, and then that movie was withdrawn, It's a very good movie. My father was part of it. A friend of mine where I stay now, it's about his father and, Shushigandu, the guerrillas, and they fought bravely from all three regions of Tibet, It's that movie, and hopefully, when it will be released in India, people in India welcome it because ultimately it's a story of escape of His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetans. But settling in India and coming to India as the refuge. As we say in Buddhism, whenever we open the Buddhist text, first three lines is in praise of India, the Holy Land. It's the land of refuge, right? So that's how we see India as, and this movie depicts that,
Some Tibetans that I spoke to who are skeptical about now the thaw between India and China and say, we've seen this before. And what happens then is that we feel let down by India, that you use us as leverage against China when it suits you. And when it doesn't suit you and you want to be friends with China or you want a thaw, then you dump us. Some of them feel let down. That, this constant living on the edge for Tibetans in exile, it causes them to feel a sense of hurt. Is that being felt right now?
No, I look at it as glass half full, I get the same question from Chinese as well, students and scholars, and when I debate with, you are being used by America or India, things like that, and some Americans also say that, I said, yeah, we want to be used, we want to be out there, we want to be acknowledged, recognized, we want our issues to be raised by American, Indian government, that's what we want, so use in a good sense. So I look at a glass half full in that sense. As I said, when India is under pressure, they do reluctantly. That's how I see it. Because I do interact with a lot of, Indian officials. They all are nice people. They all want to do the right thing. But in given context and situation, they have to act in the certain way. Particularly when Chinese government issues a demarche or Chinese government, embassy demands something formally, and Indian government, they have to act. For example, I do remember, now perhaps I can say this. Maybe not name names, but during our days in Delhi University, in the Chinese Prime Minister was visiting, and my name was listed among the blacklisted, so I could not get out of Delhi University, So, but then we have friends in the Indian government, in agencies as well, right? So I said, Lobsang, where are you? I said, I can't get out because you guys have banned me. No, we have to meet somewhere. And then literally, he gave me the list of movements of, Chinese Prime Minister so that we could have a tactical protest. Even we couldn't have 1,000 people come out and protest, but we could jump,
the barricade.
Barricade.
But you got arrested.
No, in front of motorcade. We don't mind getting arrested because it's India. You get arrested. कल निकल जाओगे क्या है चाय पानी मिलेंगे इवन द SHO है चेन्नई के पुलिस स्टेशन आज भी आ गया चलो उनको ब्लैंकेट लो बिस्कुट लाओ और चाय पियो एक घंटे के बाद ठंड दिमाग से वापस जाना there is nothing happens we know that we want to protest we want to get arrested but just that when your movement is restricted and you don't know where to go somebody in the agency will give you a say कल ना वहाँ जा रहे इस रास्ते से जा रहे वहाँ पर रहो so we hide in the bushes and we come and jump so we have
is it the same nowadays
yeah I'm sure we have so many friends
but there aren't so many high profile Chinese visits anywhere.
I know so in the last time so this Thaw but I just feel it's mainly related to tariff, right? So then after that, Trump said something positive, and Modi ji also had a positive tweet, and Jai Shankar also added
the Chinese foreign minister coming in.
No, about the Trump. He said, yeah. Modi is my friend. Yeah, we have some issues, but But
he even said President Xi is my friend. I wonder what President Xi has to say about that.
That's true. No. I mean, I always feel overall, President Trump says a lot of things on a daily basis, right? And some say that, he watches news and he wants to be in the news and he says things to be in the news. So that way he's achieving his goal.
Yeah.
So we all have to talk about one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
So he's happy. So sometimes, when he says things, like the Europeans, they're very smart, huh? This he literally scolded them, for many.
Yeah.
But what they said is they came, kept quiet, cut the deal, cut their losses, maybe make some, gains. And they said, okay, we have to deal with him for 4 years. That's how we're going to deal with him.
Yeah, but look at the Japanese Prime Minister. He lost his job.
Now, that's
Poor
internal.
guy.
No,
Yeah.
I know it's internal. It's within LDP.
But there is a lot of flux going on, Mr. Sangay. That's what I'm trying to say is that are you feeling the pressure just like maybe Taiwan is feeling the pressure? Last episode we talked about and you said it's a matter of time before China walks into Taiwan. I mean, it's going to happen this summer or whatever. At that time it did seem like that. Today, do you feel that Taiwan is feeling threatened? And do you feel that even the Tibetan movement is going to go into some kind of a cold storage because countries are like, nobody wants to get into this right now?
Taiwan, I still believe, that no matter who is the president or the general party secretary of China, the nation has been built up. The Communist Party's manifesto has been built up in such a way that what they call quote-unquote reunification of China, it's inevitable. They have to do it. It doesn't matter, right? So it's going to happen. The issue is when, whether it's 2027 or not, so there are a lot of debate. But since, the bombing of Iran, and then blowing up of this, boat of Venezuela, and the declaring now, the instead of Department of Defense is Department of War. All these have puzzled people, so that might have bought Taiwan some time because if Beijing acts, they don't know what Trump is going to decide tomorrow. He wants Nobel Peace Prize, but he wants Department of War. But then, on Tibet, in 2020, we passed the Tibetan Policy and Support Act. It was passed by Republican Senate and Democrat House and signed by President Trump as the law. So he has signed Tibetan Policy Support Act, which made it a law in America to support Tibet. Including on reincarnation, and including funding Tibetans and all that, But it's altogether different matter that Voice America and Radio Free Asia in Tibetan language should be kept, but they are being shut down now. So that even though he has signed a law, we say that this two radio TV stations should be funded, but they have been shut down.
I'm going to come on the reincarnation issue later in the show. But I still want to talk a couple of points on China before that. President Xi has visited Tibet twice in the last 5 years. He's the only Chinese president to have done so twice. Now, why are these visits significant? What is he trying to signal to the Chinese people with that?
Less with Chinese people.
More to the world.
More to the world, particularly India. Because Tibet borders India. And the largest troops, the Chengdu base, and Tibetan troops are all aiming at India. So in his first visit, the famous speech he gave, to the troops was particularly targeted at India. He said we should be prepared, even aggression, right? But then this time he gave a speech to the troops, Chinese troops, but the speech was not released because it coincided with Prime Minister Modi ji's visit to, Beijing. Having said that, I'm sure he gave the same speech. Prepare yourself for war or incursion, towards India, I'm sure. It's just that they didn't release the transcript, right? So that way, their preparation, vis-a-vis India and South Asia is concerned, I think is very clear. So they want to hold on to Tibet and fortify the border, not just militarily now by building all these, villages, so that they have, informers or signal callers all the way right to the border inside LACs, right? And then they're also building the biggest dam in the world, bigger than 3 Gorges Dam, right at the border of India, at Arunachal Pradesh, at the Big Bend. That will affect India climatically, all the people who survive, make their livelihood, the downstream people in Assam and Northeast and Bangladesh, So they literally control the, flow of water. So they can weaponize it during war. Let's say they open it, you can flood all the railroads and highways, in
the lower riparian.
And then you can, control the flow of water, for a few more weeks, and it will affect people who survive in fishery and agriculture. And then they're generating hydropower. Why? Because China has already built 400 plus dams in Tibet. Tibetans don't need any extra, energy because we have surplus of energy. They're building this biggest dam. They have already built 4 on this, Brahmaputra River. They're building now 5th one. To generate energy for AI, to build data center, you need energy. And China is competing with America and the Western world on AI. So that's the next move. You dominate AI market and you dominate the next phase of economy, and you enrich yourself, you control the world, right? So that's how they see it. That's why they're building. It's that belt is an earthquake zone. Right? Recently we had earthquake in Afghanistan, few years ago in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Nepal, Burma, and also we had in Tibet last October, and in Sichuan, because this is a earthquake prone zone is to begin with number 4 or 5, and more dams you build, more dams will lead to more earthquakes because the water seeps in and it cracks open, and then each time there's a movement, it leads to earthquakes. So it's harming all the neighboring countries. And the famous earthquake of Assam, I think in 1935 or something like that, it just destroyed major portion of Assam. Even though all these things are fact and it has happened, it's scientifically established, but China is building more and more dams to generate more energy for AI. Now, America and Europe, Western countries, including India, are constrained because you don't have, enough space to generate more energy. China already ahead in solar power, right? And battery and electric car, and also wind power. They want to have maximum
Let me come
hydrogen
back to
power. Yeah.
Tibet. China says, or President Xi says that because of Chinese rule in Tibet, there is prosperity out there. What is the truth? Because there's hardly any reporting. So what are you getting? What is the information you are getting? Is there peace and prosperity in Tibet?
Now, let me say yes first. Compared to 1950s, Tibet has developed. More roads, more railways, more airplanes, more buildings. It's a fact.
So infra is good.
Infrastructure is good. But who are the primary beneficiaries, right? It's the Chinese migrants, right? Their movements are, their migration is subsidized. Let's say the business license, even the rickshaw puller's license, even the small stalls license are primarily given to Chinese first, right? So that's how they benefit. So Chinese
So
are
complete demographic change has happened in Tibet, you're saying?
No. In urban areas, mainly during summer, Chinese migrants come and they control the business. Winter is so cold that even Tibetans have to go somewhere else. So that way, so the politically, Chinese are more powerful. Economically, Chinese are in control. Now, with all this mining that's taking place, uranium, you just name it, 75% of lithium reserve of China is in Tibet. Gold, the second largest copper mining in China is in Tibet. And then, this is like maybe $1 trillion worth of, minerals, 136 different kinds of minerals are in Tibet, and all are being exploited by the Chinese government. That's why even late Panchen Lama said, right, China has benefited more from Tibet than Tibetans have. And also, we talked about this Tibet issue. Why Tibet is so important, I've said this many times, last time also perhaps, that Tibet is the palm. You control it firmly and you go after 5 fingers, right? That's Ladakh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh. So this is the expansionist policy. Now Xi Jinping has come once and he has come second time to emphasize that importance, implementation of this 5-finger strategy. And clearly they're in Doklam, they're in Galwani, Ladakh, in Sikkim, Bhutan, Doklam, right? And Arunachal, every week they try to get, upper hand, climb up the hills. Thank goodness, our Sikh and other, with lathis, they, beat them down.
Yeah.
They're trying to. So This is an expansion design. So that's why, Tibet is very important for China.
It's important. Let me get to for those who don't know now, at this point in 2025, what is the realistic demand that Tibetans have? What is it that Tibetans in exile want? I'm not talking about the Tibetans in Tibet now, but Tibetans in exile, what is it that you want in 2025? Is it independence? Is it autonomy? Is it preservation of culture? What is the main demand?
The official demand, or aspiration still remains a middle way approach to have dialogue with Chinese government, to have genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people, which is the middle way approach. But experience of the last 30 years clearly indicates that, dialogue with Chinese government is very difficult. They are not in a mood to have dialogue with anybody. They are in a mood to take from everybody, having dialogue and, solving the issue of Tibet, getting genuine autonomy is becoming more and more difficult. So that's a fact. Now, to switch from that to go to independence is also difficult. Because the moment you declare independence, so many countries, including India, have bilateral agreements that you will not interfere in each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, right? That, even international law kicks in. Even, UN Charter, Article 4 says that, one member state cannot interfere in other sovereignty and territorial integrity. So this is how you define it, right? And then recently, US passed an act in which it said that Tibetans are entitled to have self-determination. Now, self-determination can be expanded all the way to independence and can be shrunk to a minimalist autonomy, So yes, officially still middle way, but dialogue is more and more difficult, which is a fact.
Is there any dialogue currently on? When was the last dialogue that Tibetans had, formal dialogue?
Yeah, in this book, by His Holiness Dalai Lama, I urge everyone to buy this book because this is... His Holiness has published and co-authored around 150 some books, but 2 or 3 on political aspect of Tibet. This is the book published. In this one, he says that through him, the last contact was in 2019. So not formally, because even I have met some of them. The Chinese, they come, right, in their individual capacity, either as Buddhists or former officials or a friend of friend, they come and they convey messages, right? So 2019 was the last time. And then even then it was pretty clear. When I've met few of them, they always say, oh, the door is always open. All you need to do is do this and say that. And I always told them, first tell me where the door is. Then we are willing to do and say a lot of things if you tell us where the door is. You've been saying this for 30 years, right? And then, there's never the door, but there's promise of a door. But then there are all these expectations and conditions, on our part,
What is the expectation that they have from you?
No, they always say this. You should say, for example, India, they should always say Arunachal is part of, China. It's southern Tibet and Taiwan is part of China and Tibet has always been part of China and you should not, do political activities and Dalai Lama should not travel. And I always say, first of all, Arunachal Pradesh, Taiwan are unrelated to us, right? This is a separate matter. This is India's matter, this is Taiwan's matter, nothing to do with us. Even if you say or do, it doesn't affect anything.
True.
But why are you putting all these conditions? That shows that you really don't have a genuine motivation to have dialogue. You just put conditions after conditions. And I always say that. You want me not to travel to Washington, D.C. or Brussels and talk about Tibet? I'm willing to do that. But tell me where and when that door is and dialogue is, then, rest of this will follow, right? But then, no. That Xi Jinping and Chinese leaders are very considerate. That will take time. And I said, please take your time and let me do what we do.
Oh, right, President Xi is considerate.
Yes.
That's a nice one. He had said, and I quote, there's need to guide Tibetan Buddhism in adapting to socialist society. He seems to be saying that you practice your faith, but practice it in the way the Chinese government tells you to practice it. that is the crux of the Chinese way of giving freedom to Tibetans to practice Buddhism. Is that not right?
Yeah, it's an oxymoron. It's a contradiction itself, right? You can practice Buddhism, but we will tell you what Buddhism is, right? Socialism is Chinese characteristic, Buddhism is Chinese characteristic, what they call a sinicization of Buddhism. So they said you cannot teach Buddhism in Tibetan language, through Tibetan narrative. You must teach Buddhism in Chinese language. Meaning you want to take the national identity out of Buddhism. For example, when we teach Buddhism, what we say is that great translators traveled, journeyed from Tibet to India, to Nalanda and Takshashila and other places. They learned Sanskrit and translated all those great texts into Tibetan and brought back. The struggle, the survival and death, so many challenges. Out of 10 great scholars, great minds who traveled to India, 7 or 8 of them die on the way, right? Because of jungle, famine, mosquito bites, what have you, animals, wild animals kill you, and they just die. Only 2. That's why, for in our civilization, the translators, the scholars are our national heroes, not military generals or political leaders, right? So they are called great scholars. So their struggle is part of the narrative of Buddhism. My goodness, look at this great scholar, right? So the kings and the ministers and rich people, they patronize them by giving them silver and gold so that they could travel to India, spend 5-10 years, learn Sanskrit, translate one text, and bring it back to Tibet. And he teaches a great story, very moving, emotionally painful, and lot of sacrifices and great minds. That's our story. Now they say, no, you can't teach all that. Just say Four Noble Truths, compassion, kindness in Chinese language, right? Now Tibetans, to understand Buddhism, you must learn Chinese, right? Now Tibetan masters, they don't speak good Chinese. That means whatever they want to teach, even in Chinese, they won't be able to teach properly. And the Tibetan people, they won't be able to understand properly. So essentially they want to, deconstruct and destroy the very essence of Buddhist teaching. They want to make it a part of a control process. For them it's just a procedure how to control it. You speak in Chinese, you listen in Chinese, you use Chinese texts so that we can understand, so we can control you.
How do they do that with Islam, in Xinjiang province and the others, where there are Muslims out there, and that has to be taught in Arabic, right?
Ruthless, In fact, they are not allowed to do fasting, during Ramadan. Can you imagine? You're not allowed to name your children like Muhammad and, all the classic Muslim names. Anything associated with Islam. You can give secular names. And party officials are forced to eat. Also, during our Sagadawa, which is like Buddha Jayanti month, we do fasting. All the party officials, you're forced to attend your office, sit down together during lunch, and you are forced to eat. That controlling. So that's why there was a huge protest. It continues to have protests in Xinjiang. That's why the Chinese government found it so unbearable that they put around 2 to 3 million people in quote unquote concentration camps. Essentially labor camps. They don't allow you to practice.
Where are the humanitarian agencies around the world? How come there's no protest? There's no talk about this? I believe even the mosques, they're not allowed to have the green, the mosque, makes them look like a mosque. It's just a normal building.
Normal building, not just that, they destroy. They come with some excuses, you have violated this rules, that rules, municipality rules. They just demolish. So it's amazing that, some other Islamic issue, let's say Palestine or other issues, right?
Pakistan, they keep quiet. Pakistan keeps quiet about this.
I remember an interview with Imran Khan, he said, you talk about Palestine all the time, which is a legit issue, of course, everybody deserves human rights. What about Xinjiang? I can't talk about it. Look, same Muslim people, same mosques you are talking about, same Allah you are talking about, and then same Imam are being imprisoned, right? How come one is, you can speak with your loudest voice, and one you just keep quiet. So there is this, interestingly, even Xinjiang issue, there's less support among Muslim countries because it's China. So destruction of some mosques in Xinjiang is all right, but not in other places. It's a very serious issue. Some Uyghur friends, and this awareness needs to be, created. But you have mentioned why other NGOs cannot talk about.
Yeah.
Now, Chinese government is effectively banned for journalists and scholars to enter Tibet or Xinjiang or Inner Mongolia. And they do allow a few YouTubers now, very controlled, right? They give few access, in fact, there is a British guy, YouTuber, who came to India and he visited Majdu Katila here. And he talks about Dalai Lama and Tibet issue, Tibetan government exile very freely. Same guy, he goes to Tibet and he doesn't say a word, Now YouTubers, they need, viewers, and to get access, they'll keep quiet, right? If you're a journalist, trained journalist, your credibility is at stake and you have to be objective, So that's how they control. They don't allow anybody. So that's why journalists in Beijing, they say that it is easier to travel to North Korea than to Tibet.
What about the young Tibetans? See, when you left and you studied in Darjeeling, you studied in Delhi University and all, and you have the experience of your father's stories, your mother's struggles, your uncles, aunts, all the others. But the younger Tibetans who have not seen all this, who are living in Tibet, do they feel connected at all with the Tibetan cause, or have they amalgamated with Chinese?
That's why the Chinese government, has established boarding school to take Tibetan children from middle school to high school, to 1 million children. Tibetan
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination. So normally, even in a village, if there's a school, right? So in the evening, you come back home. They've started boarding school, so they don't come back home. They come back home once, a month or something like that. Now, what has happened is that after a few months, children, they look at their grandparents as an enemy and as an outdated, feudal, backward. That's how they, spread the propaganda, brainwash them. Now, so this is the effort. But what it also shows is that in 60 years, they have failed. Now they have to resort to such extreme measures to take a 6-year-old child to a boarding school to brainwash them. So on the one hand, for short term, they could. They're taught in Chinese, they're taught about all this propaganda. But because, we live in now social media age, right? The moment they see the other side of truth, Tibetan struggle, all the challenges, destruction, loss of country and outside, they switch very quickly. So it's like a cat and mouse. So, this is what they're doing now. Because I have met many Tibetans from Tibet also, who come to the US to study, even to India. And then, once we give them a book like this, they say, I did not sleep whole night. I just read this book,
Tell me about this book.
This book is by His Holiness. It's essentially, 70 years of his, political struggle, how he escaped, how he came to India, and, efforts around the world, particularly to have dialogue with the Chinese government. All his efforts. So if you read this book, you can clearly see his sincerity in his philosophies and values and his approach towards Chinese government, that we want to pursue non-violence, we want to have dialogue, solve this issue. All the efforts he has made. And then, but at the end, he says, the last contact was 2019. He doesn't say it explicitly, but if you read the tone of that paragraph, essentially he's saying, that's the last time I met with them.
Is he talking about his successor in the book?
Yes. And he says very clearly that his successor or his reincarnation will be born outside of China. Very clearly. So that's the line he has drawn. Because till this book, there was always this issue, right? If we could solve the issue of Tibet, then perhaps, the His Holiness Dalai Lama could visit or return to Tibet. And then the next Dalai Lama will be born in Tibet, But then this book says very clearly that he will be born in a free world, not in China.
But has he already been born? Has he, when he says will be born outside China, which means that the child will be born only after, God give him long life, but after the Dalai Lama passes away, what is the process?
Yes, the reincarnation process. There's emanation, which is while he lives, he could designate a young boy as a successor, right? But, the reincarnation means one has to pass away, then, the young boy has to be born.
Okay.
So now this book also, and the recent statement, he's leaning towards reincarnation.
Okay.
Meaning, yes, after he passes away, and he has declared that he will live beyond 100, and we all pray. Recently I participated in a long life ceremony in June. They pray that he lives long, and he looks quite healthy. He is determined to live long. But after he passes away, the next will be born.
Okay, when he says outside of China, does that mean, the child could be born in Tibet?
No,
because that's
outside,
not China.
No, outside of China means at the moment outside of Tibet too.
Outside
because Tibet is under,
Chinese
controlled by
occupation,
Chinese,
supposedly.
controlled by China.
Yeah.
So that means to be born in Tibet is to be controlled by the Chinese government, and he doesn't want the Chinese government to have control over his reincarnation.
I see. And how will anybody identify that yes, the Dalai Lama has been reincarnated in this child?
That I think
is there a process to identify a reincarnation?
Yes. In the July statement, he made it very clear that, he made a statement in September 2011 where he said, he will decide at the age of 90. Because in 1969, he made a statement saying, it is for the Tibetan people to decide whether his reincarnation should continue or not. And then during my time, from 2017, 18, 19 on, we organized a lot of, meetings, global meetings, and appealed and prayed to him that his reincarnation should continue. And in July statement, he made it very clear that for the last 14 years, Buddhists from inside Tibet, inside China, Southeast Asia, even Russian republics, right? There are a lot of Buddhists in Russia, and Mongolia, and around the world appealed to him that his reincarnation to continue, and thereby he has decided that reincarnation will continue. So the idea of reincarnation is like a guru-chela relationship, right? Chela, they have to like their teacher so much that they will say, we want you to continue. So now that he has decided. So normally what happens is that then in Tibet, he appoints a regent or a regency, a monk or a couple of monks. They form a committee. Now they will form such committees. So in Tibet, they travel all over Tibet and also to India because the 6th Dalai Lama was from India and 4th Dalai Lama was from Mongolia. So it's, even though it was, international even during those days, now this time it will be more international. Now, this is very crucial because not many people know this. So now, who consists of these groups, right? Such groups. So there's a regency, they decide, they appoint such groups. Such groups are headed or participated by people who knows Dalai Lama personally. His personal cook, personal attendant, friend. So these young boys, they have to go through familiarity and similarity test. In the sense, person who knows Dalai Lama very well will come to you and look at the boy and say, oh, the boy will say, oh, you're this and this, is it? The boy has to be familiar, show some familiarity to the person who is in the search committee. He knows, oh, you're my cook, oh, you're my personal attendant, This familiarity test.
So what is it? It's the soul of the Dalai Lama which goes into the next Dalai Lama. Is that how it will happen?
Now, normally the
soul... Does the soul, like in Tibetan Buddhism, does the soul continue its life?
Yes.
What happens?
Yeah, there's a difference. We say soul and Atma, but Tibetan Buddhism, we say consciousness.
Okay.
So soul is more concrete, So we all have a soul. Soul, you die, and soul dies, and soul, goes to the person. We say more consciousness, right? Now there's a subtle difference between soul and consciousness, and soul is more objective in the sense, and the consciousness is a little more subtle than that. The soul consciousness, passes on from one person to another, right? So that's what we believe, and based on karma, right? So now when this Dalai Lama passes away, he can leave a note, he can give a direction, or he can leave indications. For example, 13th Dalai Lama, when he passes away, he was sitting on a throne. They do this, after you're biologically dead, but your body will be warm, actually. Your nails will grow, your hair will grow. We call it thukdam, right? You are in this state of, pardo, right? You're physically dead, but you're alive.
Transition.
A transition. And literally, you sit on a throne. So his face, after a few days, turned towards east, right? Now, something will happen in the east. And the region goes to this famous lake called Hamulaso, where he prays for many, many days. And in that lake, you see a future. And he saw a white house, and the green thatch, and there's a monastery, and 3 letters, Akama. So then there were a lot of translators who interpreted this and say, A means Amdo, the region, Ka means Kumbum, the district, and Ka and Ma means Karmapa monastery. That's what the monastery is. And just below that there is a house. And then one group went to that house. And it was headed by Kyusang Rinpoche, who was very familiar with the 13th Dalai Lama. So he dresses himself as a servant, and he dresses servant as the lead. And obviously the lead guy will be taken inside the house, the altar, and the servant will be kept at the kitchen. But this boy comes running, and you say, oh, you are Kyusang Rinpoche, right? You are that, monk I'm familiar with. And then they display identical items, like identical beads, identical walking sticks, and identical drums those were used by the previous Dalai Lama. And the boy identifies exactly those ones which the previous Dalai Lama used, personal items. So this is our familiarity test. So these are the tests went through, and then, then he was recognized later. So then the region will get all these boys' names, and then you have to go through a lot of rituals. And the similarity test also, and then say, oh, this boy's characteristic, the way he talks, the way he behaves, is very similar to the previous Dalai Lama. So you have to go through a series of tests. And then finally you're enthroned.
But if it's in reincarnation, that's going to happen, that means when the Dalai Lama passes away, then the child will be born.
Yes.
Right? And then the consciousness goes into that child. So there will be a time period.
Yes.
For search, finding, and then the familiarity. So the child cannot be less than about 6 or 8 years old to identify, okay, this is, right? So there will be that gap.
I know. It can be, as early as 3 years old to 10 years old.
Yeah.
So there will be this gap for 3 or 4 years, and that's why in Tibet, there used to be a regent who headed the Tibetan government, who headed the institution. So in this case now, His Holiness Dalai Lama separated the church and the state. So the Tibetan government exile is separate from the institution of Dalai Lama. Now the institution of Dalai Lama, which is called Ganden Podang, Ganden Podang is registered trust in India. So in that statement, he says Ganden Podang Trust will handle it. So the Ganden Podang Trust will have few lamas who will head this. So they will be like regency. Normally when you say regency has political connotation, but they will represent the Dalai Lama. So they will be the spokesperson for Dalai Lama, and they will travel around the world on his behalf and carry on his legacy and carry on his messages.
What happened to the Panchen Lama, tell me? The Dalai Lama he was endorsed. Where do you think he is? What happened to him?
Now that's a very important issue because in June, the Chinese Panchen Lama, the fake one, met Xi Jinping, Chinese President Xi Jinping, right? And when Xi Jinping also went to Tibet, and there was the Chinese Panchen Lama greeting him. So they are trying to groom him, to increase his profile. So they could play the role when the Dalai Lama passes away. In that gap, the Chinese Panchen Lama could play a role. But he's a fake one. He doesn't have credibility in Tibet, inside Tibet and outside, and especially Buddhists around the world don't follow him, right? Now, in 1990, when late Panchen Lama, 10 Panchen Lama died, in 95, 5 years, the search committee established by the Chinese government, headed by Chadar Rinpoche, all Communist Party members, right? They identified Gendin Chökyi Nyima, a young boy, as a Panchen Lama and sent his name to the Dalai Lama here in Dharamsala. And he also did divination and said, yes, he is the Panchen Lama. And he made the announcement here. Unfortunately for Gendin Chökyi Nyima, for a young boy, he was kidnapped. Now it's been 30 years. He has completely disappeared. And in his place, they appointed Gyaltsen Nubu, the present fake Panchen Lama, who is a son of Communist Party members, as the Panchen Lama. Now he's taking the place. So this is what has happened, and then unfortunately, Gendin Chökyi Nyima, real Panchen Lama, has disappeared since then. Now, at that time, it looked as though the Chinese government, from their point of view, they did the right thing. They made one disappear. They appointed a fake one, a puppet one. In retrospect, they made a disastrous move. Because if the Dalai Lamas endorse Panchen Lama, Gendin Chökyi Nyima, had the Chinese government agreed with that, they had physical control of Gendin Chökyi Nyima, right, Panchen Lama, and he will be the legitimate Panchen Lama, endorsed by Dalai Lama, means accepted by Tibetans inside Tibet, outside, and Buddhists around the world.
Okay.
Now, the real Panchen Lama could come out and say, oh, I will have a say in the selection of next Dalai Lama because I am also recognized and endorsed by Dalai Lama. So I hereby endorse this Dalai Lama, selected by the Chinese government, right? Now the real one is gone, the fake one is there. Now fake one will have a role to play in selecting a fake one, So they have lost complete credibility.
Okay.
They made a wrong move. So now even though they are trying to push this, but also, in some, it's tragic, because the same 3-year or 4-year-old boy in Tibet will be put through this process. He will say, you are the real Dalai Lama, and everybody knows he will be the fake Dalai Lama. And then inside Tibet will not pay respect and recognize that boy. And then boy is just innocent, And family is also innocent. But the Chinese government, they don't care about religiosity or they don't care about spirituality.
So then why do they do it? If they don't care about religiosity, if they don't care about Buddhism or the institution of the Dalai Lama, then why put up a fake one? Just deny that it exists at all. They can just stop recognizing that entire process, right?
Yeah, it's control. They just want to control. They want to control the office. They don't care about reincarnation, spirituality. They just want to control the office, and then they want to, at the same time, they want to destroy the office, right? For example, even the fake Panchen Lama, he spent all his years in Beijing. He should be spending his time in monastery in Tibet studying, right? When you spend all years in Beijing, you lose your credibility. So they control the office of Panchen Lama, but at the same time, they are trying to, dilute and destroy the value of Panchen Lama's, office.
And they don't even believe in the religion.
No, this religion is poison. This religion has an enemy, yet they want to control it. So that's why I say it's a very dangerous game. If you allow Chinese government to control the office of Dalai Lama, they might control the office of, other Buddhist leaders in Southeast Asia, let's say in Sri Lanka, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. Who are you to say? If China becomes number one, power in the world, they will not just interfere in your political affairs. They will interfere in economic affairs, as we all know, right? They will interfere in spiritual matters as well. They will say, no, not this Shankaracharya. This Shankaracharya is what I like, They are already doing it with the Vatican, right? They had a deal with Vatican whereby they appoint the bishop and Vatican has to endorse it. And who's to say they will appoint the next, cardinal, and thereby next time they will say, hey, Pope, selection of Pope,
Oh my God.
So this is the Chinese world order we should be, aware of, we should be careful about. So Chinese world order is what we experience Tibetans. So that's what we always say. You think you can have relations, you can have deal with the Chinese, but you have no idea what the Chinese system, the Chinese world order is. They want to control everything. They want to control the selection of Dalai Lama because they want to control, like they're already doing in Xinjiang, they're controlling all the imams, They say, no, you're not the real imam. People accept you. Nope, this is the guy we like, And they control Tibetan lamas. They control priests, and bishops, and soon cardinals in China. Similarly, they will tell all the neighboring countries as well and say, not this, not that. So this is the Chinese world order. And their tentacles are everywhere and they want to control everything. So the selection of Dalai Lama has major geopolitical ramification among all the neighboring countries and around the world.
So do you think the Buddhist countries or the countries where there are large Buddhist populations, they realize this? That the selection of the next Dalai Lama is going to be extremely pertinent for geopolitics, not just for religious affairs.
No, because that's why I visited the Holocaust Museum, right, in Israel and also in Germany. And there's this famous saying by this priest, right? First they came after Jewish, I kept quiet. Then they came after socialists, I kept quiet, and communists and so on and so forth. When they came for me, there was no one to speak for me, right? So everybody thinks they're exception. Okay, let it happen with Tibet. We're exception, and then it happened with Hong Kong. So what? Now it's going to happen with Taiwan, right? And then Nepal says, oh, we are exception. Bhutan says we are exception. Bangladesh, everybody says we are exception. No one is exception. It's the Chinese world order. It's the Chinese system you are dealing with, and all these Buddhist countries, they are not aware. Sooner or later, they will tell Laos and Sri Lanka and others, they say, hey, not this Buddhist leader, right? He spoke against me and he's disinvited. He speaks for me and he's invited, So this is how they will treat and shape the Buddhist world, not just Buddhist world, the matters of faith around the world.
This one question which I want to ask you is that there are some reports which one has read about the golden urn. What is that? Can you explain to us the significance of this?
Yeah, Chinese government is trying to push this, that now they are trying to reinvent and bring some, urn from history and saying, golden urn was used in selecting the reincarnated lamas, and they did. We are not saying they did not, right? But it was a political tool. Because they're forced on you. So sometimes we believe that maybe 11th and 12th Dalai Lamas, it was used. But then Tibetans, how we do it is like we already pre-selected the two Dalai Lamas, and we just went with the process of using golden urn. We didn't want to use it. So 13th Dalai Lama, we didn't use it. 14th Dalai Lama, we didn't use it. If you look at all the 14th Dalai Lamas, maybe 2 at most have used, and not other 12. So that's what they're bringing. But then justification for that historically is, the reincarnation process was corrupt, right? Because they started selecting their own nieces and nephews and rich people and aristocrats. So we brought this golden urn to cleanse the corrupt process and, bring a better system. But then Chinese ambans, officers, right, they were taking bribes anyway, using golden urn to select lamas, Corruption is endemic in China, historically, even now, right? So the golden urn never, remove corruption from the process anyway. So that is useless. Now they're bringing this. So no, historically, but then golden urn was never used from 1950 till 1990. They didn't bring golden urn at all. All the lamas were selected. Suddenly, when Dalai Lama got Nobel Peace Prize, when Panchen Lama died, they said, we need some system to, select the reincarnated lamas to control them. They brought up. Okay. So, also, even if you assume the golden urn was used, historically, it's 1792-93. So, 1809, 9, 10, 11, 12 Dalai Lamas, right? If it was used for 9, 10, 11, 12 Dalai Lamas. They all died young, at the age of 9, 14, 17, and 21. Meaning, golden urn is bad luck. So no matter which system the Chinese government will use in selecting the next Dalai Lama, will bring bad luck. Very sadly, bad luck to that boy. 4 out of 4, if they have used it, if they so claim, they all died young, you know. So, yeah, it's
How
a
do
bad
the
moment.
other Southeast Asian countries where Buddhism flourishes, how are they reacting to that, to the next Dalai Lama, the process of, reincarnation? What do the Tibetans expect from them, and what are they planning to do?
Yeah, all the Buddhist countries should be aware, should be alert on this. As I said, imams are selected by Chinese government, the bishops and cardinals. Now with Tibetan lamas, right? Soon it will be them. So that they should know. They don't know this. They just think, oh, Tibet is an exception. It's true. From 1970s all the way till 1990s, even in India, they just thought, okay, Tibet is an exception. Otherwise, we can deal with China. We can be friends with China. We were very naive. All the Southeast Asian around the world. Now, after Tibet and Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, Hong Kong, now with all the neighboring countries, their interference, they say it's not an exception. We are the rule to begin with. That's why we say, what happened to us will happen to you. So that's why you should know about Tibet, right? So Southeast Asian countries are slowly, learning about this. They say, oh, China is not just business. They're interfering in our politics, right? They favor which party to be in control or which dictator to be in control. And then they favor which, Buddhist priests, visit China and not visit China, including Sri Lanka, all these neighboring countries. So they select, they say you can't. Now, if you want to go to China, you can't criticize Chinese government. In fact, you have to praise them. That's how they control, So now Southeast Asian countries are realizing. So hopefully, India's policy of going east will not just be commercial aspect, but it will be political and spiritual aspect as well. Because India is the place of Buddha, Buddha got enlightened here. He gave all the major teachings here. Buddhist diplomacy is a low-hanging fruit for India, Which country can claim in the world about Buddhism? It's India. And it's being neglected for far too long. The oldest Buddhist organization in the world, World Buddhist Congress, established like 40 years ago, is controlled by Chinese government. And every second year, top Buddhist leaders from Southeast Asia, around the world, visit China, and they are shown red carpet and Chinese cuisine, and all of them sing praises of the Chinese government. Yeah, you can Google it.
That's so bizarre.
Yes. They say China is the biggest supporter of Buddhism. Sri Lankan, Laos, Cambodian, the Thai, around the world, including from America, including from Europe as well. Because no one was hosting them. No one was showing them respect. Now we have, the International Buddhist Confederation in India, which hosts Buddhist countries, Buddhist leaders from around the world. And I've been saying this for a long time. It's just a natural place. Chinese government can...
It should be held in Bihar.
In Gaya, Bodh
In
Gaya.
Gaya, yeah.
Banaras, right? I've always been saying that. Chinese government can send them a package, give them business class ticket, and provide limousine and red carpet, right? Then the Buddhist leaders from around the world might visit China. But India, all you need to do is send an email. Hey, we are having a meeting in Bodh Gaya. Do you want to come? They all will rush to come. Because it's like for Muslim going to Mecca or Christian Catholics going to Vatican, right? Buddhists coming to, Bodh Gaya, it's their once in a lifetime opportunity.
There are a few things that one is hearing about the Buddhist circuit, and there are these festivals which are held where we have people coming in from Thailand, Indonesia, and the other countries where Buddhism is practiced, Laos, Cambodia, which you talked about, and Sri Lanka. But it's not to the level that what China does, is what you're saying.
Yes, now IBC, International, based in Delhi, headed by very capable Mr. Haldar and others. The team is very good. In the last 6-7 years, it has picked up. And then, yes, Buddhist circuit, Prime Minister Modi also visited Bodh Gaya. And then we have annual Buddha Jayantis being celebrated with participation of Buddhist, the Indian cabinet ministers like Kiran Rijiju, So in Sikkim and Arunachal and other places also, our friend Pema Khandu and everybody is trying to do. But we are still 20 years behind China. Can you imagine Buddhism?
Yeah.
More needs to be done, and they need more support both from the public and from the government of India as
You
well.
live in the US. What can the US do, and where do you feel that they haven't done enough? Is there loss? I mean, one is hearing of, say, a Richard Gere and Hollywood doing stuff, but America as a, the administration, do you feel that they could have done more?
Yes, all the countries, including America, could have done more. But as I said, in 2020, we passed a law, Tibetan Policy Support Act, which Europe is yet to do. And we also passed recently Tibet Resolve Act, which, calls for self-determination of Tibetan people as well, right? So politically, I think, America has been the most vocal on the issue of Tibet. For example, Tibetan New Year, Losar, is celebrated in the State Department, and we have an office of special coordinator on Tibetan issues in the State Department. It took me 10 years, but finally I managed to enter the State Department and the White House as well, right? So both in the House and the Congress.
What do you mean it took you 10 years? What did you do? Why
first,
did it take you 10 years?
I know, on the one hand, there is this notion that America supports Tibet. When I got elected in 2011, officially I was not allowed to enter the White House State Department because I ran a government exile.
Because you were a prime minister, but a prime minister in exile.
In exile. This is a Nixon-Kissinger's legacy. Because in 1970s, and they want to renew relationship with China, and they had 8 conditions. One was Tibet. So they said, no, Tibetan government exile, thrown out, don't recognize them, don't acknowledge them. So we were not allowed to enter the State Department. So I used to go to Washington, D.C. 3 or 4 times a year. Okay, so in 10 years, I must have visited 30 or 40 times. I got rejected all the time by the officials of.
So you couldn't give your credentials.
No, I couldn't enter the building of the State Department.
Ah.
I had to meet them outside in cafeterias, in restaurants and hotels and things.
So
like
no diplomatic status.
No diplomatic status. Finally, during COVID, I was lobbying for this law, and in November, I managed to enter the State Department. And
What did you do? Did you really, like you did in Delhi,
Yeah.
did you just rush past a barricade?
That's an activist, right? This one more diplomacy. Every time I go, so I meet these people outside from the State Department, from different agencies, right? And then I always say, hey, how come I can't come in, right? So ultimately, I think 7 in US, ultimately 9 into agencies, they have to debate. Each time I go, and one will say, let him come, and then second time, third time, right? So there was almost a consensus. There's only one agency left. That's the East Asia Division of the State Department, because they handle China. They get scolded by Chinese embassy. They were the one, last fort holding, saying you can't come in. And finally, the special coordinator on Tibet, Robert Destro, said, it's like any bureaucracy, many of them risk averse, right? He said, I'll take the heat. Let him come, I'll take the blame. That's it, one guy, and then I entered the State Department. And there was another guy at this White House. I entered the White House. And then in the Tibetan Policy Support Act, we passed a law in which I made sure that my office and Central Tibetan Administration or Tibetan Government Exile is acknowledged. So now American law acknowledges Tibetan Government Exile and Sikyong as the president of Tibetans Exile. And my successor can enter the State Department with no problem now.
Okay, that's nice.
Also talking of reincarnation, in the Tibetan Policy Act, the biggest chapter was on reincarnation. So it's a law in America, and which clearly says that only the Dalai Lama and his followers can decide on the reincarnation. Chinese government cannot interfere. Those officials who interfere in the selection of Dalai Lama will be sanctioned. Their visas will be banned. So the American government has taken a strong stand on the issue of reincarnation.
But is America able to push back the Chinese propaganda machinery, which is so entrenched in America?
Better than 2016, I always say, is the turning point. Before 2016, their propaganda, their influence, even in universities, right, they're very strong. It just tilted since 2016. Now, increasingly, their Confucius institutes are shut down, right? They're like Chinese police stations. Can you imagine? 60 in 42 countries, 102 Chinese police stations, including New York and Toronto. Now the congressmen go outside and have protests that say we have to shut this down.
No, explain now, because I think we discussed this once before, but we need to talk about this again. The Chinese police stations and the Confucius Institutes. So, especially those who are taking the UPSC exams, if they're watching this, they need to know this.
Yes.
So, explain these two parts to me.
Confucius Institutes, they're very, very shrewd. So China has this very their diplomatic approach. They invested, I don't know, a couple of $1 billion and said any university which agrees to teach Chinese language for their students and Chinese culture, we provide textbook, a teacher, everything for free, and we fund them. Now, which university will not want that, right? So if students would like to know about China and Chinese culture, they want to learn Chinese language, and they literally spend anywhere from few $100,000 to few $1 million and have a permanent program within the university. Everybody welcome it, right? So it's fully funded, But then once that Confucius Institute is in your university, they're the watchtower for Chinese government. Each time there's an event, let's say anti-China or protest or Tibetan or pro-democracy, Confucius Institute will go and quietly say, if you do this, our program will be affected, our funding will be cut, we won't get teachers. And then, the management in the university will say, maybe, then this is more important, this few $1 million, free Chinese language, and free trips to China, we will not allow the speakers to come. They literally stop. Then slowly, they stop everywhere. Each time there's a Confucius Institute, talk about Tibet or Xinjiang or human rights, Hong Kong is gone. Tiananmen Square, all gone. Now we made it a major issue. Is say having a Confucius Institute is to kowtowing to China. Now, especially our Students of Free Tibet. This is an international organization organized, led by Tibetans. We organize protests everywhere in America, Europe, and out of 140 some Confucius, if I'm not wrong, we managed to shut down 100 or so. Because this is the price you pay. In America, you have freedom of speech, and their presence doesn't allow freedom of speech. So then the U.S. congressmen and the U.S. government learned about this, And then through this Confucius Institute, they also control all the Chinese students who come from China. They become the mold, they become the informer. And they inform on each other, first of all, Chinese students, and they inform other American and Tibetans and Taiwanese other students, right? So they became, they collect data. So then the U.S. Congress has come out and spoke very strongly about it. So Tibetans spearheaded this in shutting them down. Now, what the Chinese government has done is they have established police station. Literally, they use an NGO, so there are a lot of Chinatowns, right? There are a lot of Chinese. Many of them pro-China, mainly because they have business relationship or they have relatives in the government, and they have an NGO, and it's a service, right? Any kind of service, education, cultural, something like that. And through this NGO, they rent a place, and they bring 20 or so, Chinese policemen to that building. And their job, what they say, is to provide service to Chinese people who come from China, help them, let the tourists, they lost something, or, they want visas or their passport, things like that. But they have a consular service, but this is an unofficial. But their job actually is to track down Chinese pro-democracy, Chinese students, Tibetans, and everybody, and then pressure on them. For example, Smita Prakash, you get your bio, right? Then they will go and track all your family members back home in China. And they will monitor you, and they will say, you better tell Smita ji, don't speak against China, otherwise family will suffer. They don't get jobs, they don't get license. This is the pressure tactic. So this is how they do it. And they track you, they follow you, And suddenly you're...
Because not just as students, even when you go to the workplace,
Yeah.
it goes there too.
Yes.
So mid-level executives are told to hire more Chinese.
Yes.
And the tentacles are far and wide. And how I know this is because I just heard that the Five Eyes, the Intel countries, they realized that what seemed a very simple, innocuous kind of a thing was actually so deep.
Yes.
And that they were indoctrinating people, not just the Chinese, but generations of students who were coming in from China into America.
Hollywood, Richard Gere famously made a speech at Academy Award ceremony on Tibet, and he was banned for life. Why? Since then and now, increasingly so many producers, investors are Chinese. And Chinese are very shrewd. That's what I'm saying. You must understand. Now, not only they invest money, okay, they make sure that Chinese actors and actresses are playing roles. So you watch Netflix, TV series, and I always wait for the names to scroll. Producers, right? The Chinese sounding name, then inevitably there's a Chinese actor in the movie. They make sure that there's nothing against China. They say, if you do this, I will be in trouble. And the producers, and they'll say, we don't want you to be in trouble, right? How they manipulate you, Now,
Which is why you'll never find Hollywood movies with Chinese as villains. You'll only find Russians as the villains.
Yes.
And maybe, one or two Islamic terror groups or something like that during a war film or something like that. Yeah. But the villain is always a Russian. Yeah. But you'll never find either indulging in smuggling or indulging in any nefarious activities. There's never a Chinese villain.
Yeah. Also, for example, I mentioned this movie, right? The Four Rivers, Six Ranges, a very well-made movie, acted by Tibetans, all that. And also there's a movie on His Holiness about happiness, okay? It's teaching about happiness and kindness and compassion. 2 movies now. They're not getting OTPs, right? Netflix and, all this. They don't want to show it because they're Chinese investors. So that kind of, they're everywhere nowadays.
Okay.
So to clean it up, so now the US is passing a lot of laws now, right? So,
But why is a Hollywood celebrity other than Richard Gere, you hardly hear of anybody else?
Money.
Why? Money.
That's, for example, basketball player, LeBron James, right? There was a protest in Hong Kong, during protest in Hong Kong. The general manager of, I think, the Houston basketball team tweeted about, the Hong Kong protest, right? And Chinese were very angry, and he came under pressure. And then Chinese government, essentially what they did is, we will not have any NBA shows, right? So that means no money, and no NBA players can come. The Chinese are very, very, very ruthless. Right? They just got, and they get very scared, And LeBron James said, hey, we should not talk about issues that we don't know much about, We are not educated enough, something like that. Soon thereafter, Black Lives Matter happened. He's all over, and he expects everybody to speak about it. And one should, of course. But if you want us to speak of Black Lives Matter, people should also speak about Hong Kong and Tibet and Xinjiang. All the issues are similar about social justice.
Do you feel let down that Indian celebrities don't talk? I mean, yes, Indian politicians do. And then you'll have a number of celebrities who'll go just to meet with Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
But nobody speaks about the Tibetan cause.
Also, there's a lot of Chinese investment, right? If they want to show their movies in China, they have the largest theater, You want to make money? You're told, hey, you want to make money? Don't. I always say this, in Indian celebrities and movie actors. Look, you have made enough money. You have enough name and fame. Now you want to add a crore, a crore or 2 crore more. For that, you want to keep quiet, Don't do that. And especially when you endorse Chinese products, Why? Right? Just for money. Why don't you endorse, Indian products, Also, at one time, now it's changing. Indian cricket team was playing in World Cup, right? And, if you watch their uniform, all these Chinese companies all over, it looks like they're playing for Chinese company. I said, why doesn't Indian company, sponsor them? Why doesn't also IIC prefer Indian companies sponsoring them, even though they might give a little less money than Chinese company, So the cricket is the most popular, game sports in India. And Bollywood is the most influential, soft power of India. Why, So I just don't understand. Just for a little more money, if you want making India a success, if you want India to be number one in, in 2047, if you really want to support, endorse, Indian companies, the Indian products, that way you can use your celebrity status in a much better. And of course, few more theaters in China will watch your movie, okay. But for that, you don't have to keep quiet, So that's why. So recently, Sunny Deol met with the Solanese. I remember Salman Khan. They put their photos, which is good. There are many who come have darshan and they don't even put their photos, right?
Yeah.
And there's some very well-known names. They say, "Oh no, nahi jana hai. Parampara mein Dalai Lama's nahi milna hai, kyunki मेरे को वो Chinese fan movie नहीं देखेंगे,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if you really want India to succeed, Indian celebrities and Indian cricketers, all, we all should come together and celebrate India and support India in that way, and be voice and spokesperson and face for India, That's the only way because...
Well, you live in America, you are a Tibetan, but you've lived in India.
Yes.
And you made India your home too.
Yeah.
When you come, is there in your mind, do you find dissonance at any point of time about your identity? Do you feel that?
No. We always say this. First of all, as a Buddhist, we believe in notion of impermanence, right? And I always say, once you lost your country, you're nomadic. You have a nomadic mindset. Wherever you put your tent is your temporary home. So we left Tibet, our parents left Tibet, and we put a tent in India. India is our home. Now I live in America, So I always feel, as soon as I come out of Indira Gandhi airport, when you smell of Delhi air, I know the pollution-wise is bad for health, but for your mind it's just calming. यहाँ तो सब कुछ चलेगा आज बिरयानी खाना है, डोसा खाना है, मोमो खाना है, बाद सब कुछ चलेगा, So you give the peace of mind here, So I always, it's inbuilt, You have this mindset. All these things that I say with my heart, for India also with prema. So I don't have any.
This impermanence thing, does it? I don't know how to frame this question, but when you say impermanence, does it stop you from putting your roots anywhere? Does it make you like a nomad for life?
Now, I always say this, because there are a lot of, young Tibetans in, Europe and America. They always ask for my advice. I always say, integrate but don't assimilate, So, I always say you wake up as a Tibetan and you go back to bed at night as a Tibetan, But during daytime, you should integrate into the system, the culture, the country. Because you are in India, you should watch movies, cricket, enjoy, have friends and celebrate, be appreciative, be grateful. But you should always remember you are Tibetan. Tibet is your cause, So that's how I always say this, So integrate but don't assimilate, So even in the U.S., everywhere, that's how you value. Like Lee Kuan Yew said, you should embrace and use opportunities, Western efficiency and education, everything. But your values and your brain, your mind should be always Eastern, like Tibetan. That's what I believe.
Yeah, because in Singapore you will find even Buddhists,
yes,
going to a temple and lighting a diya, putting agarbatti. You'll find Indians in Singapore going to a a Buddhist temple, lighting a diya, putting agarbatti, praying in the same manner. The traditions are the same.
Very similar.
Very similar. The gods almost seem the same. The process of being one with the spiritual entity also seems to be similar, and there is no conflict in Singapore.
No. Also, Buddhism and Hinduism also. No, some say Buddhism is more the
reform
version that you have to define reform. Avatar hai, Atma hai, Karma hai, the Shiva hai, Saraswati. All are in Buddhism. To Kali Mata is all in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism too, because Buddhism of Tibet, came from the northern belt of India. So along the way, they brought Saraswati, Mahakala, and Shiva along the way. So there is that in Buddhist texts, all these gods are mentioned. So very similar, and also I don't mind tika lagayege, temple go.
So, but what do you like, would you say this to your children too? Because they are American.
Ha ha ha.
So you'll tell them that they are Tibetans but Americans? But how?
Yeah. As I said, your value for us, Tibet issue is much bigger. It's an issue of survival. It's your civilization. It's your country. It's your identity. So one should never compromise on that. Having said that, during daytime, you are in America. You must have American friends. You must enjoy every American pizza and basketball, what have you. But, they at the same time, they also enjoy now, BTS and Korean movie and Korean drama and K-pop and also Bollywood. So my daughter, when she wrote her application also, she writes, I'm a Tibetan, but also spent many years in India and I'm also in America, So I have all this experience. I have Hindu friends, Buddhist friends and other friends, So multicultural, but not in absolute postmodernist sense that, I don't have any identity.
Mr. Sangay, the reason I'm asking this also is because of this disconnect that some people have. Like, you go to, say, Europe and you meet with somebody and you say, you look Indian. Aap Indian hai? So then he'll say, nahi, main Kashmiri hu. Main Kashmiri hu. And then a little more you converse and you say, why do you say that? I mean, Kashmir is part of India. I say, no, we are not. We are not Indian. So we need to keep reinforcing that in our brain that hum Indian nahi hai, hum Kashmiri hain. And this is a person who's born and brought up in Europe. But he will insist that because his parents have taught him that he's a Kashmiri. Similarly, you meet with somebody, say, I'm not saying all of them, but you meet somebody in Canada and you say, are you Indian? Because he's wearing a turban. आप Indian, India कब आए यहाँ से? Say, he's saying, मैं Indian नहीं हूँ, मैं पंजाबी हूँ. I'm a Sikh, I'm a Punjabi. Now, there are minuscule of them. But what I'm saying is that disconnect that doesn't let you assimilate, doesn't let you become anything. It just, there's a conflict all the time. Do you want that conflict to stay with your children?
No, as I said, don't assimilate, but integrate, So you must integrate into the system. So that way, on a daily basis, you're as American and as European, as you can be. But deep down in your values, I always say, don't forget who you are. Even I have met some people who say, oh, namaste, why are you saying that? I'm American. Arey, nahi yaar, you have Indian name, you are Indian. One should be proud. So that I don't want. They just go from this. I met some Korean also. I said, oh, you're Korean. Have you visited Korea? No, I'll never go to the country. I'm American. Kahan se yaar, You're not, So even in America, you are in America, but you say you're American. Yes, legally you're American. But values, culture-wise, you're not, Then one should realize that even Americans will look at you and say, yes, you are American by citizenship, by your legal rights, but you are not American, Then we must accept that that's a reality. So that's why, so many people go through this identity crisis. They went into challenges because they don't have these values and mindset right, So that's why I always say, during daytime, I always say, I'm as, person one can be in that particular country, So now, yes, the challenge, what you said is, if you hold on to yourself as too much, for example, let's say I'm a Tibetan, I dress like Tibetan, wear Tibetan, and talk only in Tibetan, say, no, I am Tibetan, then you are in problem.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
You must fully integrate into system. You should be as Westerner, as a Canadian as you can be, during daytime. Absolutely, and as friendly as possible, and be grateful.
Yeah.
Because, you are in that country.
But you have to hold on to that dream that you have.
Yes, values, your identity, you should always be Tibetan. That, if you maintain that balance, then it also is good for you. That you can navigate the society much better.
And in your mind too, I guess.
A peace of mind,
Peace of mind.
Because you should be appreciative,
Right.
So, because I always say this, whenever I take, whenever I meet Indians, anywhere, immediately I say, Namaskar, aap kahan se hai? Arey, Hindi itna bolte, haan, hum bhi Bharat se hain, hum Darjeeling se, wahi paida. Acha, kaise? Immediately there's this connection. Immediately you become friends. And whoever says, why are you saying this? I'm American, I just avoid these people. Literally.
Okay, interesting. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Sangay, for coming here and explaining. So next time you're in India, we'll get to know more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and I really appreciate to be invited again. And our last program was watched by more than 1 million people. I know yours is watched by tens of millions, but in the Tibetan world, when it comes to political issues, I think that's one of the highest viewership in the Tibetan political world.
I'm glad if not just the Tibetans, but also, those who are taking the civil services exams, because they are going to be the ones who are going to be formulating policies for this country. So for me, that is also, students who are going to be in positions of power in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. When they make policies for this country, they need to understand our link with Tibet and not forget, okay, certain geopolitics, wo to hota rehta hai. But long term, we need to be one.
Yes.
And understand that.
Yeah, I mean, Tibet is in India's interest. We discussed this last time. After losing Tibet, India is spending billions of dollars on the border.
Yeah.
And China has come all the way, So I hope UPSC examiner will put questions on Tibet and, listen to this podcast and put it out there.
And so viewers and listeners, to understand this episode, do watch episode 131 also. If you're interested in understanding the entire Tibetan cause in continuity, watch these 2 episodes to understand this better.
And also the reincarnation
and
is going to be is going to be a major issue.
Yes.
And thanks to you, and his Solens will live very long. But we need to create awareness and also control the narrative.
God give him long life. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Thank you for watching or listening to this edition of the NR podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you have seen this or heard this. Namaste. Jai Hind. Click here to watch the previous episodes.